Okay, again, the Bootstrap grid system uses a series of containers and rows and columns to lay out and align content. It's built with Flexbox and it's fully responsive. Responsive means that it will respond to the size of the screen that you're working on. So this website, getbootstrap.com, docs/4.4 layout grid, can be found in the documentation under the grid system category. Now, the way that it works is you're going to have a whole bunch of different types of divs. So this piece of HTML code right here has one div that surrounds the whole thing. That's called your container. Okay. And the container goes from the beginning of the document all the way down to the end of the document. Then this content here has one row. So all of these three columns, one of three columns, two of three columns, and three of three columns, right? These three columns are each their own div. So the first one has a class of column small. The second one has a class of column small, and the third one has a class of column small. So since there are three columns nested inside this one row, the row is a full width. Each of those columns will be added up, or one equal space division of that full width row. Okay. There's also an option for you to use the class container fluid instead of just container. If I use container hyphen fluid, it will show you a full width page, and I'll show you an example of that. If we look at my REPL here, my example, right now this is a container, and the container leaves these little spaces here on the left and the right. Okay, leaves the margins. If I go into the index.html, you can see that right after my body tag and right before my close body tag, I have these divs, and this is everything in my whole page. It's a div class container. I could add fluid to it, and now everything included in my page would look like this, meaning don't leave the margins. I want you to take up the full width of the screen. Okay. So if somebody was working on, say, an iPhone, you don't want it to have these big margins. So you want to have your device decide based on the size of the screen which type of styling you're going to use. Okay. This first row has just this introduction to Bootstrap text in it, and so it has one class that's just a row. Then it has a second class or a second div inside of it with the class column, which means I only want one column in this row. And I also want to select the class text center. So it's giving the styling from bootstrap.css. If I search for .row, the row class, you can see says, hey, give me a full width and give me a margin right and left. Then that column inside of it, .col, we can see that it's going to be 100% of the width of that row. Okay. And then the other class that I added to the row was text-center, and it's saying, hey, make sure that this text is centered in the division that it's in. Okay. All right. I keep going. I'll go back to the index.html and we'll look at this second row. Okay. Another way that we can look at this, I'm going to take out the fluid container. Go back over here, hit refresh. Another way that we can look at this is I can right click or two finger click and choose inspect, and I should be able to come look at this first section. Okay. And in this first section, I should be able to see, hey, here's my first row. And inside that row, it has one column that has a width of 6, and then a second column with a width of 6. Okay, column SM6. The SM means if somebody is on a small device like a phone, instead of displaying this text and the picture next to each other, stack them so that they look better and they look more like what you would see on a cell phone. Okay, so there's my first, or there's one of the rows. I look down at this next row. Let me widen this back out so you can see it. Next row here, it's a big div. Every div is a rectangle. That div has 2 columns in it. So if I expand that div out, you can see the first column is at column SM6, 6 out of the 12 rows. The second column is column SM6 as well, 6 out of the 12 rows, 50% width. Okay, I go down to the surfer row. Ooh. Surfer row. All right. Inside that surfer row, I have 2 divisions. The first division is a div call dash SM4. That's 4 out of the 12 rows, or 1/3 of the width. And then a div column dash SM8, meaning, hey, that's 8 out of the 12 rows. So I have, what is that? 4 out of 12 is 1/3 and 2/3 instead of the 50-50. So I'm controlling the amount of columns the width will take up by the number after the call. So call dash and then how many columns I want it to take up. Okay, same thing here. And that is how we end up styling our page. So we're going to add these classes that somebody from Twitter wrote, right? In the Bootstrap framework, and we'll use those different classes to style our index.html page. We'll end up adding these class tags. It will then style them the way that this class is defined in bootstrap.css. At the end, again, we can go back and add more tags, and we can add our own custom classes that would be in style.css. You'll never actually edit bootstrap.css. We would never want to edit this. We're going to leave their work untouched. What we're going to do is we're just going to add the class names to the elements that we want styled in that specific way. All right, so we covered how to add the text center class to center the text in a division, and we covered how to add columns of different widths using column dash SM and then some number out of 12, and then rows which set up a full row. Again, if I went back here and I looked at the container class, the container class would fill everything in our whole, every row should be in a container, every column should be in a row. So this container class just kind of goes from the beginning of the body to the very end of the body.